Hey, how's it going, everyone? Scartafist here, and today we're going to be talking about the April 22nd post regarding Freeman Guerrilla Warfare's new remaster, overhaul, whatever you want to call it. It's almost been a month now, and I've been meaning to get to this video, but my personal life's been really busy as of late. But today I finally found some time to sit down and just kind of give my thoughts about this post overall and what it means for the game. Now, I put a notepad over here because last time I did PowerPoint, and this time there just wasn't enough for me that I wanted to talk about to put it in a PowerPoint. I feel like a lot of what needed to be said in my, for me, I already said in that PowerPoint. This is just going to kind of be a little bit more refined and just new things in general that I want to quickly touch up upon, right? So yeah, we're going to start things off with combat and AI. I've already read through the posts, but I have it on here just in case for those who haven't, and we're just going to go through it. All right, so let's start, like I said earlier, with combat and AI. I talked quite extensively about this in my PowerPoint video, and TLDR, the issues were regarding pathfinding and just AI accuracy, just because they have aimbot, right? This obviously they're looking to rework. You really can't say much about the combat right now because we just have not seen enough, and we already know what the biggest issue is. But what can be said is, one, they found a middle ground for the vehicles. I'm not sure how this is going to work overall. I still think it's iffy, but I think it's okay. Like, I think it's an okay middle ground, honestly. They're adding a mounted SUV with an SUV with a mounted machine gun. Now, people are still going to be upset because they're like, oh, we can't, we don't have the tanks or whatever. This is the best they can go. This is where they meet you halfway. Now, the question I have regarding this is that machine gun actually mountable by the player or troops, or is it just going to be like the AI doing the targeting stuff? My guess would have to be the latter. I don't see it being the former because they already have the assets in the vehicle update for it to auto target, and that's a lot easier to implement. But it'd be a nice little treat if we could mount it, but I'm not sure how that would work in terms of balance, right? It could definitely break the game in that sense. So it's probably going to be the AI controlling it, but it's a nice little touch to have, and it's a good middle ground, right? All right, something else as well. The game seems to be moving, at least what they're saying in the remake of the combat, it's moving in a Tarkov-esque direction in terms of how they want gunplay to be. They want it to be challenging. They want troops to have to be able to use binoculars like sniper squads to spot people out. Upgrades for certain weapons will do certain things, right? Definitely making things less cookie cutter and more niche, right? You have to swap gear and armor out depending on the situation you find yourself in. I really do like this, and it adds a tactical layer, makes every engagement more unique. It can be a little bit tiresome, but the solution to that is to just essentially add gear presets. So where you're in the desert, boom, you equip this automatically instead of having to go back and forth, right? Hopefully they do that, but we will see where that goes. Now, another question is going to be, will the AI actually be competent on their own? Because they mentioned reworking the AI to be a lot more smarter and a lot less brain dead. Because currently the way it works in the 1.41 build of Freeman is everyone runs in a straight line, or if you're unlucky, they try to run in the straight line and they get scattered because of pathfinding, and then they just shoot each other, and whoever has the higher stat check wins. That's essentially how combat almost always will inevitably end up working. Like, it just cannot be avoided. You try to outrange them, they got range on you. You try to outrun them, they can outrun you. So it's just run in the straight line, hope you get the jump on them, and you kill them fast enough before they can retaliate, right? So if they're talking about the sniper squad actually staying back and having maneuvers, good step in the right a good step in the right direction, I should say. Right now, also something else. Please lower the bandit spawn and size growth. It's a little bit ridiculous, a map this small given all the factions that are possible in the game, because bandits can take control. So you have almost upwards of 10 factions, including alpha and your own. Just a map this small for that many factions, like, right? If that continues to be the same, please reduce the goddamn spawning, especially if you keep the bandit camps and they're not holding a city. There's no reason why within a day they've reformed 30 troops that are like pretty decent tier for that matter. You could scale them to be significantly weaker, but it's still really annoying, right? Because they have an aggressive AI that will try to attack your stuff. Something else also that I just kind of skipped over briefly because is reputation gating locations. And I'm going to talk more about this as we get further into the video, but don't make the new locations that you plan on adding in this open world, like the airport, the military bases, whatnot, right? And even cities for that matter. Do not make them like easily accessible. Don't make it so that all I have to do is travel there to be able to get the goods, right? You should not be able to enter certain parts of a facility, or maybe not even, or maybe even a single city, unless you have a certain reputation with either the city itself or your own personal reputation, right? And if you want to implement your personal reputation system, that is also a good idea. In fact, maybe do both. That would honestly make things a little bit more interesting. It would justify the grind early on in the game against the bandits. It would make it so that you actually had something to do instead of bum rushing directly towards end game content. It would, like, I get it. It will lock you into a specific content, but that's fine. That's honestly fine because you have a defined structure that you're working with. Now, continuing with this open world, please be careful with the open world. You tried this experiment last time. It failed horribly because you had too many things that you wanted to do and nothing really got done full polish as a result. Now, I know it's an old team, whatever, and I trust that they're going to do a decent job or do their best to give us a better open world experience with these new locations. The map size is definitely going to have to increase if they intend on implementing, these military bases, these airports, whatnot, right? And if they're removing the lumber mill interaction, which please remove that. That is the stupidest thing you have ever added in the game. That is, like, please freaking remove that shit, right? But if they plan on doing this, you need to make sure that the map size is going to increase, because there's no way you're fitting everything that you just said on a map like this unless you have some serious changes, like the reduction of a faction, like you just remove one faction altogether, which can happen, right? But yeah, back to the lumber mill. One more thing, I get that if you want to have materials be rare, right, to like get something and build something, fine, but don't increase the price of it, right? But don't make it so that I can't get it in the desert because nobody ever heard of trade. Come on, you got guns but you can't trade lumber in the city. Come on, man. Like, it just doesn't make any sense, right? This, like, it literally does not make any sense. But yeah, that's enough about me like ranting about this. Is like the one of those things that just drives me insane. It's just, this is like my little pet peeve. It's like the stupid lumber mill, because I wanted to upgrade shit, right? But anyway, yeah. Now back to the map size. If the map size doesn't increase for any particular reason, give us the transport truck regardless, right? We want the transport truck. Even if it does increase, it's a better reason to give us the transport truck, which we had in the vehicle update. And this, I can assume that this is already going to be in the game, because you saw in this post over here, they're adding gas or fuel, right? Now, I would like to think the fuel is not just for an SUV that is optional, right? It's definitely going to be for the transport truck, which I like to see. And this would make, this would mean that the map size increasing, barring performance issues, is perfectly fine. If it increases and you don't give us the transport truck, well, then we got a problem, right? Because it's going to take forever. But yeah. So I was talking just quickly about how you want to reputation gate these locations. And, this is just kind of because currently the recruiting methods are from prisoner stacks or from captured enemies, which just leads to prisoner stacks in general. You're not actually going to cities to get any troops, for the matter, because you can just get Cossack rebels, or you can just go to these mercenary camps and hire from there, right? Which is like half okay with the mercenary camps, but also, why am I relying on I should not be having best in-slot troops from a minor faction that I have to capture. Like, it doesn't make any sense. But by reputation gating these, it will make this. It's not going to necessarily solve the problem unless you rework stats, which should be. But it will make things. It will make the player go to a certain area more frequently, right? It's not going to make it so that we completely ignore the barracks, and you got to make sure that the troops are tuned correctly as well for this. All right, now moving on to graphics. I'm not going to talk too much about the open world stuff because there's another aspect that I do want to touch upon. It's basically, we already touched upon it in the previous video, right? Now, going to graphics. The biggest thing about the graphics, which, I mean, I'm going by what they said, right? They're adding a weather system. If they can put this in, I'll be very, very happy. But I'll believe it when I see it, because it's been promised, like, I think twice already, and they just couldn't get it done, right? Now, something else in regards to companions that they talk about the graphics. They say the companions look the same. Yes, they do, but I'm more concerned about the fact that all the companions, like, they have lore, but we're not immersed into the lore because everything seems so, like, there's just not enough content in the game. Add more lore into the game, and you're gonna have a situation, and behind the factions as well, right? If you add more lore, and maybe that means cutting down the number of factions and focusing specifically on the companions, but adding more lore surrounding the companions, even though it becomes a stat check at the end of the day, it's going to make them feel more flavorful. graphics, I really don't think the game itself on aesthetic appeal is that bad. I think it's perfectly fine. But if they want to, maybe it does need a little bit of a touch up. But what they're suggesting is a complete like facelift almost, right? I think graphically the game looks fine. You've got, as everyone knows, bigger issues to worry about. Performance in general, you got to improve that for older systems, and improve overall, right? We're not going to go too far into that. What I do want to go into now, finally I had the time, is going to be progression. This is something that I didn't touch upon too much in the PowerPoint video, and now that we have a better idea of what the dev team is looking, their picture or their planning so far, we can finally pick apart and see what needs to be prioritized. So for progression, if the map size remains the same, which it probably isn't, reduce the number of factions. I cannot it's not feasible. It's not feasible. You have 6 factions in the game right now. You know what else has 6 factions? Warband. But Warband's map is literally double the size, and in their base game they literally only had 5, right? The classic version, I should say. You should not everything is so cluttered, and this is why I was saying avoid a cluttered map, right? Everything is packed in so densely. It's too overwhelming. It's just literally like, go to this city, oh this city, and they all do the same thing, right? But if you increase the map size, I'm okay with having the number of factions that we currently do. Maybe even rework a couple of factions, and this is going to come down to the lore aspect of it, right? But yeah, you also want to make it so, honestly, I shouldn't talk too much about how you're going to do factions because we don't have enough about it, but just, yeah, that's just spiel regarding that. Next thing, Alpha Forces. I think that the current implementation of Alpha Forces is a very, very mixed bag. I like the idea of having an endgame force that comes to try to fuck you up, but at the same time, I do not think it should be arriving after you have conquered every single city. I think that really, really, really messes up your transition from a mid-game to a late/end game. It makes it so extra grindy and tedious. And a lot of people will just quit because it's like, well, it's going to take too much work, right? I just think what needs to happen is this with Alpha Forces. It's one simple change and the problem gets solved. But 2 birds, 1 stone, from a progression point and from a grind point, right? So what needs to happen is this, and you already read it. Add a time delay for them to spawn. Don't make their spawning conditional on you attacking. Make it so that maybe after 100 days in game, they start spawning squad after squad. They don't have to come all at once and take over everything, right? But make it so that they start spawning, right, within after 100 days in game. And so that way players need to be aware that, listen, maybe I don't want to declare war right now because Alpha is going to come in and just fuck everything up or mess up the whole map, and it's better for me to kind of wait and buy my time. Or maybe you can form an alliance with a faction and just take on Alpha together, right? It offers more, it basically adds a little bit more replayability, and also makes it so that your transition points from that mid game to the late game is very, very smooth, and it flows beautifully, right? Because currently, I already said this in the previous video, we don't have a mid game. We have early game that transitions to late game that transitions into end game, right? And you can clearly know it's an end game because late game is when you're conquering all the other factions. End game is when you're defending your stuff and reconquering from Alpha, right? You don't need an end game. There's not enough content in this game for an end game. You don't need 4 stages. You really only need 3: early, mid, and late, right? That's what needs to happen for the Alpha Forces to fit in perfectly. Now, I talked about reputation gating earlier, and I'm going to go a little bit more into detail with it right now. Certain troops and gear, like your high level stuff, make sure that they you can't access them early in the game, right? Maybe if you get lucky, right, with just a black market, or maybe you sneak into a facility and you can steal something like that, right? Maybe add a little mechanic like that, but make the chances super low, right, for it to happen. Generally speaking, as they said it themselves in the post, the current build, it's very easy to exploit, and the game just breaks because you have best gear pieces by day 10. It's very easy for that to happen. If you reputation gate this, right, whether it be from faction relations or a personal reputation system, this problem of breaking the game becomes solved, right? Another way you could add the progression that they're looking for, right, is you massively increase gear prices. So you keep the amount of gear that you have right now, Don't faction gate it, right? But you make it so expensive and tune, you know, money Zalti gains, as I almost forgot the currency in the game, right? Zalti gains and XP, so that it's gonna take them, even if it's in there. They're gonna have work to put in, or you add a modifier that delays the spawning of the gear, right? Similar to what I was talking about for alpha forces. You should not be having top end gear spawn like early in the game, right? Or it should just not be attainable. You just delay it, right? For whatever reason. Make it like 50 days or something until you can start getting really, really good stuff, right? Or you introduce, and this is a little bit more radical, a crafting system that is properly tuned. And I really don't think this is a good idea with a game like this. But if you are going to do something similar, my idea for it would be after every battle, you get something like weapon scrap. And then if you have enough weapon scrap, assuming it scales correctly, you take it to the black market and they build a weapon for you, right? Or they can build an upgrade for you by the time you're transitioning from mid to late game, right? Or you do a combination of all of these, which I think is a pretty good idea, but save for the crafting system. This is a little bit more tricky to do and would take more time to get correctly. Do like the increase the gear prices, add the modifiers, reputation gate, add a personal reputation system, right, that you get from killing armies that are X amount of times bigger than you. And that will make it so that, kind of like how renown works in Warband, right? The higher of it you have, the more likely people are to follow you and the easier you can recruit, right? So if you're at 100 or something notoriety and you go into a city, you meet that quote unquote reputation check. Or if you have a certain relation, let's say 75 plus relation with that faction or that particular city, depending on how the game wants to go about it, right? I don't think you should add too many reputation checks, but if you reach a certain threshold, you have access to, let's say, the Pozna battalion snipers. And all of this is assuming troops and weapons are tuned correctly. Everything progression-wise assumes that they have tuned the actual the actual things that we're working towards correctly. If it's tuned right, tuning itself, we don't know what's going to happen until we actually see the opening, and that's easy to fix, right? It's these core systems that you really want to get down correctly, and judging by what they're saying so far, with who they're going back to the main team, it's a good step in the right direction. I like what I'm seeing so far. Now, I'm also aware of the fact that there is the prestige in the current 1.41 build that kind of functions as a personal reputation system. But let's be honest, guys, it's just a number with a shiny icon. It really doesn't actually do anything, or if it does, it's not impactful whatsoever. Either remake that or implement it correctly. It really feels like it was a feature that was just put in there, barely finished, and they said they would get to it and they never got to it, right? In my current game that I still have not finished for obvious reasons, I have like 4,000 prestige and I don't really notice that it does anything for the matter. I know that if I lose a battle, the prestige will drop, but it's kind of useless in that sense. It'll affect morale at most. Now, bigger question is going to be the ETA. You want my personal opinion? 4 months minimum. I wouldn't be surprised if it takes half a year. If they really do implement everything, right? And this means that they're going to have to make new assets, new systems. They can't reuse like they did previously, or retool, right? If they're going to do this, I really, really think it's going to be a minimum of 4 months. I would be shocked if we saw something within 3 months. I really would. And they should take their time. They really should. And, good on them for not charging us. And they said it themselves. They do not know. They do not know. They have to overhaul the whole project. But my guess is 4 months or so. They're back with their core team. Things look to be going good. I like where this is going overall. That's really all I had for this video in general. Very promising stuff so far, guys. Very promising, right? But yeah, like I said again, personal life's been really, really busy, so it's been making editing and just making videos in general impossible. But I'll try to probably, my life's gonna be still pretty busy. It gets a little bit better in 2 weeks, but really it only eases up in the summer, and that's only for a few months before I start school in September. It's gonna be online learning, but yeah, just very, very busy personal life. Thank you guys so much for this long-term support. Thank you for sticking around. Thank you for watching my videos. It really does help. I'll see you in the next one. All right, guys? Yeah.